said, we had another mass shooting up in Maine. This one hits close to me. As you know, my aunt is from Maine. I've spent quite a lot of time there. It's absolutely beautiful up there in the summer. But and obviously, I love blueberries. But what is it about this situation? America is the only country that's having kind of mass shootings to this level. Unpack this for us, can you?
Yeah. Well, extremely sad situation, and people usually fall on one or two sides. Usually, Republicans say it's a mental health issue. Obviously, the Democrats say it's a gun issue, and I think the truth is somewhere more in the middle. I think both have points, but we really to understand all of this. If you say it's a mental health issue, then we need to really look at the history of mental health in America to see where we are. And if we do have more mental health now, which we appear to in this 21st century.
Well, I know that mental health statistics are getting worse.
Yes.
Because of, mostly because of social media and all the accoutrement that go with that.
Yes, that is a large contributor, no doubt. Going back to the mid-1800s, people with mental health disorders were basically shunned from society, often at the time put in sanitariums or mental health hospital that emerged during the 1800s that actually treated them at times worse than actual prisoners, without any healthcare afforded to them, often without clothing, poor nutrition, isolated in a cell, and treated with tremendous inhumanity. So they were advocates, one of which was named Dorothea Dix, I believe, Dix, last name, who was, I guess, from Boston, Massachusetts. She was an advocate to make mental health an issue in the U.S., to create awareness. And because of that, there was proliferation of mental health hospitals. And the idea was that mental health hospitals were going to make people well. And that did not happen. And there was tremendous abuse throughout the 1880s all the way to 1920s and 30s of mental health facilities really not being humane to individuals.
It was slightly more humane than it had been before, but still awful.
It was still pretty awful.
Okay.
Yes, conditions were terrible.
Right.
So in the 1930s, another element to this was added, which was lobotomy or neurosurgical approaches to fix mental health issues. And some of you may know, I believe, Rosemary Kennedy, JFK's older sister, had a lobotomy that was approved by Joseph Kennedy, the father.
Yeah, famously so. And she was just not even that. She didn't really have that much of a problem. She just wasn't listening to her dad, from the story as I've heard it.
Yeah, maybe so. And so there was also electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, or some people call it electroshock therapy, that had its role all the way to the 1950s and 60s.
Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yes, like the famous movie I guess won the Oscar for Best Picture.
Yeah, with Jack Nicholson.
72, 73, 74, one of those years. When The Godfather didn't win.
From the book that was taken by Ken Kesey's book of the same name, yeah.
Yes, very famous. So there was, after World War II, President Truman signed into law, I think July 3rd, 1946, the mental health law to really study the problem and to find solutions. And again, from a humane standpoint, because till that time, much of the prior adverse negative behavior towards these people was still being seen. So more hospitals proliferated, and then in the 1960s, with the first few antipsychotic medications that received mass use, and other psychoactive meds, including, benzodiazepines, the methamphetamines, and aforementioned tricyclic, not only antidepressants, but antipsychotics. The move went from people being in a hospital to people being outpatients. So that was promoted by the pharmaceutical industry as well. So many of the hospitals were emptied, but unfortunately, economic conditions, the 70s, we had, inflation, we had tough times in the inner cities and so on. Many people with mental health disorders became homeless, became, or went into the streets basically without much help. And, you, Davio, were a young child at the time.
Yeah,
in New York?
The Bowery Bums was a thing when I was a kid. I lived right off of 1 block away from Bowery, and when Reagan emptied all the mental institutions,
Yes.
a lot of them, the halfway house was literally 3 blocks from my house, and my mom always used to tell me to be very careful when I walked past those streets. And I saw literally thousands of homeless people that were clearly had mental health issues.
Yes.
People walking around naked, people just screaming at nothing.
Yes.
Just
behaving in odd ways. Anyway, so today we acknowledge that about 1/3 of all homeless people have an underlying severe mental health disorder. And by severe, I mean they have a psychosis like schizophrenia, various types of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe depression. These are the kinds of things that now occur in about up to 5% of the population. It's a large number.
wow, that is a lot of people.
Yeah. And then,
So that's like if you're in a class of 300 people, that means 15 people probably
there
have mental health issues.
some severe underlying mental health issue, and some rear themselves, or they become evident over a period of time. So some quirky behaviors that are seen in a preteen or a young teenager may become more accentuated as that person becomes older. Anyways, currently, 1 in 5 people in the U.S. will have a mental health issue at some point per year.
Can you say that again? Is that
20%,
one in 5?
up to 20% will have a mental health issue. Now, again, I'm talking about, could be minor anxiety, OCD behaviors, obsessive compulsive disorder behaviors.
So not all mental
Minor.
health issues are debilitating.
Correct. Minor, yet all are important. Okay?
Of course,
we don't want to neglect that point. But minor in that they can be overcome, hopefully with the help of a mental health therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. Sometimes it requires a counselor at school. Sometimes, depending on the age and the marital status, a marriage counselor can sometimes help. In other cases, it could be even a social worker by putting that person in the right environment. And again, when I say 20% will have a mental health issue per year, 20% of a population of 340 million people, okay, that's close to 70 million people per year.
Yeah.
That's a huge number. And then 5% have a serious mental health issue of the ones I mentioned earlier. So that would be 15 to 20 million people in the U.S. with serious mental health issues. And as I mentioned, about 1/3 or so of homeless individuals currently have, for the most part, untreated mental health issues that are significant, severe. So
Right.
these people, of course, are more likely to experience poverty,
Sure.
ill health, so more likelihood to end up in jail. 25 to 40% of people with severe mental health issues will end up in jail sometime during their lifetime. It's a huge number. And of course, they're less likely to be productive members of society. They're more likely to have a shorter lifespan because of health issues. And currently about 11, 12% of the population who with mental health does not have access to healthcare. In other words, no health insurance of any kind, not private and certainly not federal policy for healthcare.
Well,
So
well,
we have a
it's-
huge deficit.
Well, it's like the Bible says, right? To those that I've given some, I'll give everything. To those that I've given little, I'll take that away too. If you have mental health issues and that causes you to not be able to keep a job, and then that makes it you don't have economy, and then you can't keep a house, and then it
Yes.
just spirals out of control.
Yeah. So that takes us to what you mentioned at the beginning of the segment, which is what occurred in Maine. And again, I'm not a forensic investigator. I don't claim to be a detective. I'm just a simple country cardiologist with some common sense. And, I looked up recently the largest database on mass murder, which is the Columbia University mass murder database. And the researchers there have investigated
And that's-
1,800 mass murders starting from the year 1900 till the present.
And the listeners online, they can access this as well, right?
Yes.
To double check. Okay,
Columbia mass murder database. And it's 1,800 cases. And then defined what a mass murder is, which is 3 or more victims, not counting the perpetrator. And their findings, not mine, are that about 5% of the cases can be directly attributed to severe mental health issues.
Wait, only 5%?
Only 5%. Yes, 5%. I was surprised to see that. So these are the psychoses, the schizophrenics, the people with severe bipolar disorder, that's manic depression, alternating, severe depression individuals. Yes. And in 50% of those committing these atrocities, again, since the year 1900, there's no prior mental health diagnosis whatsoever. No obvious red flags that would say, hey, that person
50%?
50%, yeah.
Well,
Yes.
that kind of puts paid to the idea that it's a mental health issue, right?
No, there's no prior, there's no issue. They're reacting to an immediate crisis.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
To say that mental health is the cause for the large number of shootings, from what you're saying, that's not the case.
That's correct. Yes, I see your point. Yes. So 50%, no attributable causation from mental health issues. No red flags. And their conclusions is that probably this occurs in people who have poor impulse control and they are acting or reacting to an acute issue in their life, whether it is loss of a job, other financial issues, loss of a marriage.
Yeah, a lot of times
loss
it's
of a
people.
spouse.
A lot of times it's like infidelity in the marriage or the breakup of a marriage.
Exactly. Things that cause an acute crisis, and we being imperfect humans, we react, and sometimes that lack of impulse control can, spin out of control, for lack of a better word, and result in tragedy. So, another interesting part of this reading, and I recommend all of you who have an interest in this topic to go read and educate yourselves on it, because there's much that can be learned from this database, but also the investigators point to the fact that we still have much to learn. There's no one quick answer. But one statistic that was interesting to me was the number of mass murders per billion people on Earth.
Yeah.
So this database is not just the U.S. This is a worldwide database, okay?
Okay.
The 1,800 such cases that are documented in this database are worldwide. So prior to 1970, the incidence of mass murder was 7 per billion people per year.
Okay.
7 per billion people per year.
Tiny.
Yes. After 1970, now we're 28 per billion people per year.
That's a 4x.
4x. Yes. And one of the statistics they point to is that since 1970 on, that's when the dramatic increase in gun ownership occurred. Again, I am not an expert on this. I do not I got to take a disclaimer on this. I'm just telling you what's in that database,
Well,
which is interesting.
I want to say something to the listener that maybe thinks you're biased, who doesn't know. You're actually, on most things politically, to the right of center.
I'm conservative, yes.
Yeah. So for you to be taking this stance, which is such a shibboleth for the right wing, I mean, it shows how you are not someone who has your beliefs and then tries to make the facts fit the beliefs, but you're actually quite a reasoned thinker, and you look at all the evidence, and you're not just someone who takes one side of the aisle or the other and that's it. But
Yes.
you're actually being thoughtful about it. So anybody listening to this that thinks that Fred is a big Obama supporter that is saying these things, it's literally the opposite. So I just wanted to say that in case the listener who doesn't know you personally would think that, oh yeah, of course he's going to say this, because you're not usually liberal and stuff like this. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, that's right. So, we may ask why we have so much more mental health issues now than ever before in the history, certainly in the United States. Now let's focus here on the US. And we can point to one factor that you already alluded to, which was the excessive use of social media. And there are a number of studies that in psychiatric in the psychiatric world from great institutions that have determined that if social media is used less than 2 hours a day, that causes less mental health issues in young men and women.
That's right.
By far. And we've touched on this on a prior segment. So social media, for many reasons, when it's used excessively, can increase a sense of loneliness, isolation, anxiety, depression, even nihilism, which is, a belief in nothing, that nothing is real, that society has nothing to offer, and maybe even increase anger and a sensation that society has rejected you. All of these can increase the likelihood of having mental health issues in an individual, mostly anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation,
Right.
for example, right? So,
Which have all gone up.
yeah. The media at times can worsen this with so much negativity and opinion, depending on agenda-driven ideologies on one side or the other.
Sure.
And that can also cause tremendous mental health issues, anxiety in individuals.
I think there's another thing that's causing, and tell me what you think because you're the expert. I think really poor diet
Yes.
can make people exacerbate, especially like someone who's bipolar. If they're eating just a bunch of crap or a
Yes.
bunch of alcohol, I think it can exacerbate the depression or the mania. What do you agree with that, or is
Yes.
that a real thing?
Yes, it's. I do agree with the concept. Difficult to prove in terms of causality between fast food and those that consume fast food on a regular basis, say more than 5 times per week,
Right.
and mental health. But my gut instinct, and I don't have the data to prove it to you, is that you are correct that there may end up being a link to an increase in various different types of mental health issues. No doubt.
Because I think when people go on a bender with like really bad food,
Yes.
I don't know. I've just anecdotal evidence. I've seen friends like spin out when they fill themselves with crap.
Right. And again, it's difficult to do this type of research because it's hard to control all the variables. But I believe that there may be eventually a proven causality to it. Clearly, you mentioned substance abuse. So substance use disorders can increase, obviously, the risk of anxiety and depression and suicide and the things that unfortunately result in people being diagnosed with mental health issues. So this is where I think we need aggressive information for people to understand that they may be having a problem, to get help
Right.
quickly. Like Alcoholics Anonymous does a great job in getting people in and helping them with alcoholism. And of course, there are many other techniques and centers that do a fabulous job, depending on the problem at hand. Other issues, of course, is promoting mental health wellness in the schools and in our educational system, and having the wherewithal to put young kids on the right track, so that they don't end up having truancy, and they don't end up going into the juvenile judicial system that can be so negative for their mental health.
Sure.
If they're in that system as teenagers. So parenting is exceptionally important, especially two-parent families. I think there's a lot of data to demonstrate that two-parent families have a tremendously positive impact on young kids, and so they end up reaching higher levels of education, less juvenile delinquency, less incarceration, less substance abuse, less criminality. And the statistics on that are pretty clear on those young people that are fortunate to have two parents that are active in their education and their day-to-day discipline. I heard a statistic the other day that said a young man growing up with a mother has, with two parents, a young male, being cared for by mom and dad, versus a young man being raised by a single dad, the outcomes are the same in a positive way.
Right.
It's when the child is with a single mother, the young man with a single mother, where the statistics diverge in the negative way towards that young man growing up with a single mother.
Oh, wow. That's probably because mothers aren't able to handle a teenage boy like a father can.
In a more disciplined way. Perhaps that's the obvious implication of that statistic. So, there are other things that I think enhance or promote mental health issues today, that go hand in hand with social media use, which are the video game use, the pornography addiction that may occur in up to 25% of young males in particular, and of course, recreational drugs and isolating themselves.
Well, drug use has actually gone down for young people than it has been historically.
Yes.
But I think overstimulation is something that people have. Back when we were kids, you had to go outside and use your imagination, and if you wanted to have fun, you had to go make something, make a fun. Whereas today, if I let my kids, they would literally be on those electronics, either social media or video games or TV or movies, endless choice, but they don't have to leave the house.
Exactly. Yes. So there's a lack of purpose.
Right.
There's a lack of mission in life. And I think that's an important message to help mental health, is to have a mission, have a purpose, have significance in your life of what are your goals, what you want to accomplish, dreams. You've got to dare to dream and try to reach for that dream and be consistent with it. And physical exercise, proper nutrition, great sleep patterns, all of these are going to help tremendously the mental health of young individuals. And so,
well, I know my kids, if they know that they have video games available, they will wake up beyond early.
Yes.
So I have to let them know that it's not available, or else they'll wake up at 5 a.m. just to get back on it. It's like it's like a drug. We've talked about this in previous podcasts,
it's an
but
addiction.
It's the same pathways, right, that the opioid addictions have.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So we want to attain our dopamine, or our oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins and kephalins through healthy behaviors.
Right.
We've mentioned many, or whether it's a hobby, reading, going for a walk, getting some sun, calling a friend, being creative, whatever it is that you like. But having a purpose and a mission in life should never stop. Not even when you retire, not even when you have made a lot of money and now you do not have the worry about paying your bills. That's even should redouble your your resolve to become more exploratory and to go and continue dreaming.
Well, thank you, Fred, for elucidating this. Your response is not what I expected. Like I said, it just goes to show
Yeah.
how you are full of dimensions, and that you like to really take the information and find the angles and not just parrot one side or the other. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is the Leverage Podcast. Please like and subscribe us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thanks.